Welcome, everyone. We are entering the closing address of these 2 days of such insightful and generative conversations. I think over the past 2 days, we've heard from such a diverse um, group of leaders and grassroots leaders, young dynamic entrepreneurs, and just experts from a whole host of domains, all sort of united towards one shared goal. And, I think we sort of want to tie in the theme of collective action and who else to do it than Norma. I think she does need an introduction, and yet just wondering how do I start. She's been an environmental activist, an animal activist, and a lawyer for over 35 years. She has she has taken up over 300 PILs, public interest litigations pro bono, and she's been also awarded, she's received the Padma Shri award in 2002, and for her advocacy work, her legal advocacy, and she's been the driving force behind the ban on bullfights and dog shooting in Goa. As like we have so many inputs and so many ideas that we are coming out of, and we want to take it forward into our daily life after this. We don't want to lose momentum, and I think we're looking to you to sort of guide us and lead us into that. So over to you. Oh, Norma, actually, you're on mute.
Yes, is that okay?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So thank you for the very flattering introduction. I will get straight into the lecture. I have a prepared note, so you will forgive me for looking down at the paper sometimes and addressing you. In my brief review of the agenda, the participants, and the discussions involved, I was pleasantly surprised to see a fresh approach to the issue of food, farm animal welfare, and policy change that you have initiated. And I see these new strategies of dialogue, collaboration, and partnership as a desire on the part of activists, whether they are environmentalists or animal rights activists, to forge a new direction aimed at cooperation to achieve our goals rather than confrontation, antagonism, and hostility, which in my view does not help or improve the situation in any way. It is in this spirit that I have titled today's talk, Reimagining Our Relationship with Human Communities for a Better Future for Non-Human Animals. Before I go any further, I wish to acknowledge the assistance of my friend and fellow activist from Goa, Mr. Alok Hissarwala Gupta of Center for Research on Animal Rights Goa, who helped me to prepare this address for this conference. So I have divided my talk into 3 parts. Number 1, a departure from humans as offending party to humans as partners. I think for too long, we have seen our fellow human beings solely as the offending party. That is, the persons or the people responsible for the exploitation and harm of non-human communities. While no doubt this view is justified to a large extent, it also creates a barrier that hinders cooperation with people who do not subscribe to our views on food. And this restricts the progress we could make together, even on other aspects of animal welfare. So I think we need to slightly shift our perspective and think of humans also as potential allies or partners in change. The second thing I want to address is on the significance of food in a country like India, where on the one hand we have starvation, malnutrition, and on the other hand you have the super rich and the people who use up a lot of the ecological resources of this world. So we are a people in India who attach deep cultural significance to the food that we consume, both as sustenance and as a powerful symbol of our identity. We're very proud of the region or the state we come from, not only because of our cultural practices, our dress, and so on, but also the food we are accustomed to, both vegetarian and non vegetarian. Therefore, we need to explore how do we influence people to change their dietary practices in the interests of human health, which is what we can appeal to, and also the ethical treatment of living creatures. And the third point that I will look at is what does this reshaping or rethinking of activism and our relationship with human communities look like, and can it be done? How do we, as advocates for environment and animal well-being, create spaces for dialogue that are inclusive of diverse perspectives and backgrounds? How do we ensure that the solutions that we propose are not only effective, but they also resonate with people in their everyday lives? Because I truly believe that if we move forward thinking of a commitment to partnership, to understanding, and to inclusiveness, the future of farm animal welfare is bright, where we build a world where both humans and animals can coexist and thrive. So let me take each of the issues in turn and advocate its benefits. Firstly, from humans as offending party as to humans as partners. Let me tell you of my own journey. It began somewhere in the 1990s, addressing two issues: the protection of street dogs from being killed by municipalities and the unimaginable cruelty inflicted on animals used for entertainment. Those were days when street dogs used to be shot dead on the street by dog shooters. It was a profession in itself, just because they were hanging around in public places, streets, parks, beaches, etc. Those were also the days when bullfights were a legitimate form of entertainment, where chief ministers and high-profile dignitaries as chief guests on feast days, and betting for high stakes was the added enticement for those who were unable to be present at the arena. The fate of street dogs and performing animals, while we got a ban in Goa on both issues, these two aspects have been the central focus of animal activists in India since then. The decades when modern animal rights movement took shape in our country. Now, at that time, the only or the primary tool we used was the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. And all our efforts were directed towards criminal law. Dealing with this gross abuse and exploitation of animals, whether street dogs or those used for entertainment, meant that activism often revolved around filing police complaints, registering FIRs, pursuing charge sheets, and demanding arrests. Now, these actions, they were and they still are necessary to combat animal cruelty, but they do have their limitations. The lack of serious consequences for those violating the law fostered a culture of impunity, because penalties for animal abuse are minuscule, to say the least. Rates fixed in 1960 still hold good in the 21st century. Secondly, we are always reacting. We are responding reactively to situations. We are always in a crisis mode, trying to mitigate cruelty and suffering, running from one issue to another, from one place to another. And for many animal welfare workers, even today, their work involves navigating the complexities of criminal law to address violence against animals. There is another downside to this approach. Animal activists are perceived as anti people, sometimes anti poor. As a result, the work of animal welfare activists is often perceived as divisive rather than constructive. They say that, the activists are people who have nothing else to do. They are affluent, they come in cars, they don't face the daily daily run of life where people are bitten by dogs and so on. And we are seen as elitist. Now, this is where we face a significant challenge in expanding our activism to farm animals or animals in the food industry. Look at the fact that 60% of Indians are non-vegetarian and over 90% is non-vegan. So an anti-cruelty approach positions the vast majority of our own people as the offending party, simply by virtue of consuming animal products. This is not a feasible or a sustainable approach when more than 90% is against you. So let me reframe this. A significant portion of animal activism today focuses on protecting animals from immediate harm. But some issues, particularly those tied to the use and exploitation of animals, are deeply entrenched and systemic. These challenges require a long-term, strategic, and I dare say, a compassionate approach that shifts away from assigning individual culpability and instead proposes more progressive or alternative ways of thinking about food. So let me illustrate this with a scenario. 3 college friends meet for lunch. One orders a vegan sandwich. The second orders a fish tikka roll. And the third orders a chicken sandwich. The first friend is a proud vegan. The second is, as she considers herself, an ethical pescatarian. I eat fish, I don't touch meat. And the third simply loves chicken. So I pose 3 questions. Is the friend eating chicken an offending party, or can we see the person as a victim of a supply chain system that offers only industrially farmed broiler chickens as a default option? What should animal activism advocate for in this situation? Should we advocate an alternative free-range chicken sandwich, a plant-based mock chicken sandwich, or a lab-grown chicken sandwich? The person likes chicken. What options can we suggest? What is our goal here? For the chicken-loving friend to give up chicken entirely, or to ensure that she has a variety of humane options to choose from? And what about the second friend, the ethical pescatarian? She has decided no meat, but she eats fish, eggs, and dairy products. Is she a hypocrite for choosing fish over other animal products? Should we, as animal activists, respect an individual's right to make personal, limited choices about their consumption of animal foods? Is she on the way to looking at the farm animal situation in a different way? Can the farm animal movement aim for a reduction in animal product consumption without demanding perfect purity? Is it reasonable to advocate for a reduction in harm rather than an all or nothing approach? How do we go about it? And finally, what role does the vegan friend play in this scenario? Does she have a moral duty to initiate change? And if so, how can she do so in a respectful, non-judgmental manner? Is it enough for her to live by example, or should she actively engage in dialogue with her friends to encourage a shift in thinking? And can the discussion begin with human health before it moves on to animal welfare? This example, which I've given you, is meant to encourage us to think about activism and policy interventions without placing blame or taking a moral high ground. It is an invitation to consider the broader context and engage in conversations that focus on changing systems and not just individual behavior. Let me move on to the second point. That is the nutritional and cultural significance of food in India. India is a country of tremendous cultural diversity. And this diversity is profoundly reflected in our food, in our preparation, methods, ingredients, cooking styles, and the variety of dietary practices. We have vegetarian, pescatarian, non-vegetarian, non-vegan, vegan. There's no single unified Indian cuisine. Rather, there are several distinct regional cuisines, each tied to specific cultural, religious, and linguistic identities. Alongside this rich cultural tapestry, India also faces a deepening crisis of inequality. The wealthiest 1% of the population controls over 40% or more of the country's wealth. And the economic disparity is mirrored in the unequal access to basic food. According to a 2024 WHO report, half of India's child mortality is attributed to malnutrition. India ranks 111 out of 125 countries in the 2024 Global Hunger Index. These statistics paint a stark picture of the food insecurity that many people in this country face. The challenge for food policy in India then is not just to alleviate starvation and malnutrition, but to ensure that food access meets both the nutritional and cultural needs of the people. Because for many, food is tied deeply to their identity, their traditions, and their values. Therefore, ensuring access to culturally and nutritionally appropriate food must be a core part of their right to life, to dignity, and food security. None of the above, however, negates the urgent need to include farm animal welfare in conversations about food policy. At the same time, we cannot formulate alternative food futures without first engaging honestly with the ground realities of food in our country. And so what I'm proposing is this. Just as I suggested, we move away from seeing humans merely as offenders in the context of farm animal welfare, we must also, as animal activists, work to create a compassionate and empathic understanding of cultural and nutritional food choices. We must separate our objections to the killing of animals for food from the reality that food, whether derived from animal products or not, is an integral part of people's lives which sustains them, which nurtures them and shapes their sense of belonging. Because food traditions are woven into the fabric of people's histories, their childhood memories, their cultural practices. So I think the challenge is not to ask people to abandon these traditions, but to, for example, build on traditions that the community already has, such as fasting and abstinence from non-vegetarian food on different days of the week, during different periods, and so on. This is as per religious dictates, no doubt, but we can move it forward to push it for health reasons as well. I recall the difficulties of getting people to sign up as members of PFA simply because the last line of that application form said, I will strive to be a vegetarian. And people were not willing to sign that form. They were not willing to agree to that, although they agreed with every other aspect I was campaigning. No shooting street dogs, no bullfights, no use of animals in circuses, no use of animal testing for cosmetics, not in experimentation, and so on. But this single one thing prevented them from adding their name to the number of animal activists which we had. And I used to approach celebrities and so on, and they would point to that line and say, but I honestly cannot sign your form. So I think that in our work, we must strive for solutions that don't simply push an agenda of dietary purity or ideological purity, but that we try and foster understanding and provide practical, humane alternatives. So how does, if I go to my third point, how does this reshaped activism and this new form of relationships look like? I think we have to rethink our approach towards farm animals and also challenge how we will relate to people, thinking of them as our allies, even our critics, and those with practices we hope to change. Activism, when it is approached with empathy and understanding, has the potential to inspire transformative shifts. But to do so, we need to evolve beyond rigid ideologies and instead build frameworks of collaboration and opportunity. And I suggest 4 of these techniques, you would say. One is the politics of compromise. The idea of compromise is often viewed as betrayal in the world of activism. You're sacrificing ideals for practical solutions. However, in the context of farm animal welfare, compromise does not mean abandoning our values. Rather, it means finding ways to create meaningful change within the constraints of existing cultural and economic realities. I spoke of the malnutrition. I spoke of the daily midday meal which goes across to children in India, which has egg in it. What do? Do we say, no, you remain malnourished because eating an egg is wrong? How do we move forward? The truth is, if we demand immediate perfection, we risk alienating the very people whose behavior we wish to change. Instead, by adopting a more flexible approach, which focuses on reducing harm incrementally, we open doors for a real sustained change. For example, instead of insisting that everyone adopt a completely plant-based diet overnight, we can focus on shifting people towards more sustainable, humane choices, whether through plant-based alternatives, ethical farming methods, or lab-grown products. For example, battery chicken eggs supposedly cheap and easily available, can be thumbed down in favor of free-range chicken eggs. That is less harm to the poultry. Battery chicken eggs cause immense cruelty, as you know, to the animals. The latter is no doubt expensive. The fresh farm eggs is expensive, but involves much less cruelty on the egg-laying chicken. It's a significant choice, which not only contributes to reducing animal cruelty, but also gets the human being proud to be a small part of the movement for removal of cruelty to animals. The person says, okay, I am contributing in some way. I am not going to have the battery chicken eggs. So compromise is not about lowering our standards. It's about adapting our approach to fit the complex, diverse reality in which we live. And through this strategy, we can build alliances and move people step by step towards a more compassionate world. I know compromise all too well. As a lawyer, when you're in court, you have a goal, you have something that you want to achieve, but when you cannot get that, you at least try to get some progress made towards another day when you can fight another battle. Everything is not lost, but if you stick by your one objective and you don't get even a slight move forward, then you sort of practically lose the war in a certain sense. So you have to make compromises in order to move forward and try and push your agenda slowly forward. The second is we should envision a future of where one is of opportunities, not restrictions. To truly reshape animal welfare, we need to offer people a better future, one where they don't feel that they have got to abandon their cultural practices or comfort for the sake of animal rights. Rather, instead of focusing on what people have to give up, we should emphasize what they can gain: cleaner, more ethical food systems, better health, and a more sustainable world for future generations. We all know how much feeding animals costs in terms of land, in terms of the diversity that the food that we have got to eat, and so on. The future must be one where alternatives to animal products are widely available, affordable, and culturally acceptable. Alternatives. It is not just about asking people to change, but it is about presenting them with opportunities to embrace better, more ethical options. For that, one has to invest in research, education, and innovation, and at present, we have plant-based or lab-grown or ethically sourced animal products, make them more commonplace. The vision involves creating new markets, fostering sustainable food production methods, and opening up opportunities for consumers to choose compassion without feeling that they are sacrificing their own way of life. The third thing that we need to look at is protein alternatives. One of the most immediate challenges in shifting food systems is finding practical protein alternatives which are both nutritious and culturally palatable. Protein is a fundamental part of a diet, and for many, it is synonymous with animal-based foods. So for farm animal welfare to gain real traction, we must make it easy for people to access alternative sources of protein that are equally satisfying and nutritionally complete. The good news, of course, is that plant-based and lab-grown protein industries are rapidly advancing. From lentils to chickpeas to innovative products like plant-based meats, cultured meat, We have alternatives that replicate the taste and texture of traditional meat while offering a cruelty-free and most sustainable option. As we continue to push for these alternatives, we must be mindful of regional food preferences and cultural considerations. A tofu-based burger might appeal to some, but it may not be the solution for all communities. So we must prioritize creating diverse, accessible alternatives that resonate with different segments of the population and ensure that people of all cultural backgrounds have easy access to these new, better options. And lastly, we need to lobby with government to de-emphasize CAFO methods, concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations. One of the most impactful changes we can make in the fight for farm animal welfare is advocating a shift in government policies that support factory farming. We do not want factory farming because it causes unimaginable cruelty to the animals. CAFOs are at the heart of much of the cruelty farm animals face today, with animals raised in conditions that prioritize profit over their well-being. So we need to lobby government to de-emphasize these concentrated animal feeding operations and their methods, and that is crucial for long-term change. It may involve pushing for policies that support regenerative agriculture, local farming, where the birds are free, the animals are free, local farming, and ethical animal industry. It's a step forward in the right direction. And we should not feel entirely backward to suggest this to government officials who instead want to promote factory farming. It means advocating that subsidies and incentives are given to small-scale sustainable farming, which make them economically viable rather than industrialized meat production. Additionally, we must encourage governments to support research into sustainable farming practices and alternative protein production. This includes lobbying for funding and policy framework to make lab-grown meat, plant-based proteins more accessible. The role of government in shaping food policy is undeniable. Government puts its money into places which make things cheap and accessible. We need to move government to fund alternatives rather than the age-old practices of factory farming. As animal welfare activists, we must hold government accountable for the systems that they fund and they regulate. If we push for the shift from factory farming to more humane, sustainable models, it is not just an ethical imperative, it is a political necessity. With these few words, I wish all of you much success in your future ventures. I hope the thoughts and the ideas that I have put across, which are in the interests of ultimately reaching to a society where the animals are not harmed, not placed in miserable conditions, and where much of the population can see where we are going, why we are going. These methods and measures, partly of compromise, partly of understanding, partly of sympathizing and appreciating where people come from and where we can make a difference, requires an effort on our part, but I think it will be well worth the venture. Thank you very much for inviting me to address you at the closing session of this symposium.
Thank you so much, Norma, for such an inspiring talk. I think everything that I had to say has been said in the chat. I don't know if you were able to follow the
No, I
messages.
did.
Okay,
I
I'll
will look
definitely
at it now.
because I think it has been overwhelming over the last 2 days to listen to so many different perspectives, and I think everything that you said tied it all together very well. We spoke about farmers as partners. We spoke about culturally relevant ways of advocacy, and I think the way you sort of brought it all together and sort of showed us very actionable steps, how we can think about our advocacy in the long term, in terms of politics of compromise, putting animals at the center and doing whatever we can so that we can sustain our fight and take it as a marathon rather than a sprint. And I lastly want to say that to gather together for a cause is also a revolutionary act, and I think we've pulled that off over the last 2 days. We've had 200 people, more than
Oh,
200 people
wow.
gather in at different points of time, of course, but we've had people from all across India, but not just India, but also from the US, from Europe, from South America, and I think all coming together for the cause of food systems transformation, ultimately for for our love for animals and for thinking about a way to envision a better world for all of us. So I just want to say that, like, someone like you who speaks to not just animals, environment, women, and human rights. I think you've shown us a way forward, and I think I hope that this sort of gives us all the momentum to keep going and keep gathering together, keep giving each other support and resilience. So thank you so much once again, Norma.
Thank you
Uh,
very much for your appreciation. It does come from the multi background that I do have. One foot in animal welfare, one foot in environmentalism, women's rights, human rights. That's true. You need more feet than two. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think like our talk, our 2 days has just been about intersectionality, right? I think all of us here just feel strongly about being intersectional and sort of respecting all the corners that people come from. And I think the goal has to be to step out of silos and come together to sort of, because our differences are not stronger than our shared values. So I think that's what it's all about. And
Somebody
thank
has somebody has said that the talk should be framed. If you want a copy, I'll send it to you because it is there in writing.
Yeah, that would be amazing, actually. Yes. I
Yeah,
hope.
I did prepare it because I didn't want to just, to bring several thoughts together, you need to have something sort of solid before you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Thank you so much, Norma. And
thank you.
hope you
You're
have a
most
great
welcome.
day ahead. Uh, yeah, we'll just be closing it. You're free to drop off or hang around for a
All
bit as
right.
we do the session.
Okay. Okay.
Vinny, could you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, closing remarks are done. And thank you once again for all your time in preparing this talk and being here with us. Next slide, please. There's a feedback form in the chat. If you could please fill it out. We want to be doing more of this, and your feedback can help us know what we did well and know where we can do better. So please be as candid and as kind as possible in sharing your thoughts, and we'll make sure to incorporate it. Next slide, please. Thank you to our sponsors, ProVeg and Animal Law and Policy Network. While we do want a space where we can all gather across the country, I think having spaces where we can physically interact is very important, and that's what ProVeg and Animal Law and Policy Network have done. We've got a great experiential experience over the last 2 days at our hubs in Bangalore, Delhi, and Hyderabad. So, and it has been made possible by our sponsors. So, thank you for that. Next slide, please. We have a few events coming up. I hope that some of you and many of you can be a part of it. We have the third annual Comparative Animal Law Workshop coming up in the first week of April, where we have brilliant speakers talking about a range of different topics in animal law, and it's a comparative aspect, which means that they'll be comparing laws from different countries, and this is how we can see how laws interact and influence each other, and how they can sort of knowledge sharing across countries can be generative. And we have some excellent keynote speakers, Visa and David, Professor Visa, Professor David, who'll be sort of opening on the 2 days. And it is free, it is open to the public. Day one is aligned to European and Indian clocks. Day two is aligned to the European and American clocks. So feel free to join in when you can. Many of these presentations will also be published in journals. So we hope that you will keep following their research, and hopefully some of it will be useful for you in your advocacy as well. Next slide, please. Oh, and then we have a lot of exciting events from Asia for Animals. There's the International Macaque Week, there's the Asia Farm Animal Day, and the FAC regional event Nepal. So this is the FAC regional event in India. There's a similar one that's going to be in Nepal, and we hope that you can follow more info about the events on the link given on the screen. Next slide, please. Correct. Thank you. And then, of course, there's the AFA conference in Taipei this year. So you can scan the QR on your screen to register to attend. Again, the lineup is incredible. There's so much diversity in terms of topics and speakers, and it's going to be very insightful. So I hope that many of you can attend, either online or in person. Thank you so much for joining us. We are coming to an end to our 2 day Farm Animal Coalition regional event in India. I hope that you've taken some time to fill out the feedback form, and we look forward to reading your comments there, or you can drop that in the chat. And with this, I wish you all a happy weekend, and thank you so much for everything you do.